Hi everyone, Patricia Worby, Alchemy Therapies here, and another in my ongoing series of conversations with colleagues who do similar work to me, working with the unconscious mind and the mind-body connection. Delighted to welcome my friend and colleague, Linda Witchell, this afternoon. And Linda, it's been a long while since we've seen each other, but it's always good to connect. And I just wanted to find out, I know you do hypnotherapy and you do counselling, and you have this amazing combination that you sort of use with people. But how did you get to be doing what you do now?
Wow, hi there, Patricia. Yeah, I became a counsellor and hypnotherapist when I was in my other wonderful job, which was a nurse. And it was because I suddenly thought, you know what, there's so many people that need to talk about things, and it's not necessarily about the physical aspects. And so I went off like lots of people do, and I did lots of counselling courses. And one of my counselling courses included hypnotherapy. And then when I got into hypnotherapy, I went, wow, this is just amazing, because it can help people in a different sort of way. And so I went on and, do what lots of people do, more qualifications, ended up with a master's in hypnosis, and now I'm doing a master's in psychology. So keep going with it, that's what I say.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's funny how a lot of us can have alternative careers before we get into this work, and I certainly did. And I've been in clinical research and all sorts of jobs actually when I think about it. But I think what the power of it is that you're working with the bigger part of the brain, aren't you? The unconscious mind, if you like, the sort of 85% rather than the 15%. And you're able to actually influence that in subtle ways. So, I mean, what sort of areas do you focus on in particular?
Well, I focus mainly on anything related to anxiety, and there's a very long list of things, everything from fears, phobias, stress and anxiety at work, fear of public speaking, to things related to bereavement and loss, because that's also got an anxiety related aspect to it.
Oh, it absolutely does. Yeah, I know probably the bereavement that I had when I was, a young woman was my father, and he died quite suddenly. And I think that had long-term ramifications for me that I didn't even know at the time. I mean, the grief was horrendous. And if I'd had someone to sit and talk it through with, I think, it would have been so helpful. But of course, I was completely against that at the time. I was like, I don't need help, I'm going to cope, because that's how a lot of us are, isn't it? And anxiety didn't really strike me until it's sort of, I was in my mid-30s, and that's when it really hit me hard. It was sort of like bang, and I was in this state of constant anxiety. I actually used to shake to the point where I couldn't hold my hands still.
Wow.
It was that bad. And of course I wasn't sleeping, and just there were some awful times. But the way I look at anxiety now is I sort of see it as a sort of surface awareness of something underneath that we're not looking at. I don't know if you agree with that or disagree with that.
Yeah, I do agree with that, because say I specialize in anything related to anxiety, and some people have got a lot of, I mean, we all get anxious, it's a normal response, but it's when this anxiety becomes a problem and starts taking over your life, makes people worry a lot, or they can't sleep, or maybe they start having bowel problems, or things that are not easily explained. And it's very often because they suffer with some form of anxiety.
Yeah.
And so some people will come to me specifically with anxiety issues because they recognize it, but there's many more people that might come with something like, oh, I don't know, maybe they've got some sexual dysfunction or something, and they come to me saying, yeah, I've got this problem, but actually when we tease it apart, there's a big anxiety issue there.
Beautiful. Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad you raised that, because I did actually want to ask you a little bit about sexual dysfunction and sexuality in general, because It's been my observation, actually, that so few people will talk about this. I mean, even in our therapy circles, it's very rarely mentioned as a specific issue. It's often sort of brushed under the carpet as being, you know, unrelated to what's going on in people's lives, but it's such a big part of people's lives to have connection with others, isn't it, and intimate relationships. So how do you think it plays out with people?
I think you're absolutely right, but I think there's some aspects of it that we have to acknowledge. And the first is that sometimes it's a cultural thing. So some countries are able to talk more openly about sexual problems than other cultures. Some cultures, you know, even if they do talk about it, it's perhaps not considered very important in life. But yes, that intimacy, that sexual connection with people is important. And it's a basic human need, that we need that intimacy, that connection with people in some way. So yes, certainly I always think about people's backgrounds, their culture. And of course, we've got some specific other cultures that might come into it, ways people have been brought up, maybe if there's a religious aspect to it, or maybe if it's, you know, if somebody's gone through some traumatic childhood where those things perhaps they don't want to talk about. It's it's much bigger, this thing about talking about anxiety and sexual problems than a lot of people think. So I'm really pleased that you're homing in on that, Patricia, because it's a big aspect, and it's not just the physical things related to sexual issues. I mean, lots of people, they might, you know, some people come to see me, perhaps some men with erectile dysfunction, and they've done the right thing, and this is really important, that they've gone to their doctor to check that there isn't a physical reason, or maybe they haven't got a urinary tract infection or some other issue, and then they come to see me because of the psychological aspects. And we will talk about a little bit about the actual, what the issue is, but we talk perhaps a bit more about any anxieties, any traumas from the past, and how that can have an impact on how they're feeling right now about themselves. Because if they don't feel safe, if they don't feel in control, if they feel they're not good enough in some way, then all these thoughts and feelings can have a big impact on the final result, which they see as their sexual performance. So, yeah, it's not just males. I mean, females get a lot of these problems as well. They get perhaps, arousal disorders or desire disorders. I mean, there's a lot of women out there that just sort of go off sex, and they can't understand why, and it might be because they're very stressed, they've got childcare issues, they don't feel good about themselves, and then that end result is that they don't desire that intimacy because there's so many other things going on.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that desire actually is a function of our nervous system, isn't it? It's about relaxing enough with enough stimulation as well, and having that perfect balance. And if you've got other stresses in your life and other things going on, the nervous system becomes overwhelmed and can't actually function in the way it's designed to. And so the first thing that goes often is pleasure.
That's right.
For men and women, and not just in a sexual way, but, joy, doing things that you love. I often see that's where people often stop. They carry on working because work is seen as being, important for survival. And we actually lose the joy of life. And that's such a shame. And it's such a sadness, and sad that we don't realize that so much of our functioning is based on our emotional health, And
I like what you've just said there, because you see, I don't think it's all about the sexual act. I think that, intimacy is so much more about feeling close to somebody, feeling safe with somebody, feeling that you're wanted, that you're needed. And so, you know, it can be just as simple as getting that nice feeling when you hold somebody's hand, or if you like somebody to hug you, to put their arm around you. So it isn't always about the actual, you know, intercourse. There's many aspects to, you know, the psychological aspects of sex and, you know, trauma, etc.
Yeah. And thinking about what happened to you in your past experience, of course, which is what trains your nervous system how to interpret what's going on in your current environment. Past traumas can really impact the way you feel about yourself. You touched upon it. You said feeling good about yourself, you know. And I do want to use my own experience here, because I think it's helpful for people to understand how this plays out. Is, you know, for a long while in my early life, I didn't really feel worthy of love and intimacy and connection. And so I would actively kind of block it or sabotage it, or I would just say, oh, you know, I'm okay on my own and I don't need anyone, and those sorts of things. And even in sexual response, it would be a case of, oh, I don't need that, you know. It's just like, to deny your own needs becomes a habit that you learned when you were young, but it perpetuates in adult life and causes a huge amount of suffering, actually, when you're involved with someone and they really want to be intimate with you. So, I mean, what's your kind of take on past experience and how it kind of changes us?
Well, I think it's really important, because obviously I've studied a lot to do with hypnotherapy and the neurological side of things. And, you know, although we don't understand exactly how it works, there's a lot more into it that we do understand now. And we can see that it's not just a placebo effect. So, yes, when I think about treatments like hypnotherapy, it's all about understanding the patterns that people have, the behaviors that have been reinforced over many years, and to be able to look at somebody's beliefs and say, well, is that really true? And that's why I like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, because it's so much part of hypnotherapy, because it helps people to understand things consciously and make the effort to change the patterns consciously. But then we have the reframing, the reinforcement through positive suggestion subconsciously through the hypnotherapy. And, you know, it just makes a great fit to be able to help people to move forward with things and to make changes to this pattern of not feeling good enough, this pattern of a belief that actually isn't always true. And in fact, most of the time, a lot of these negative beliefs are not true. You know, we've all got something important to give in a relationship. It's just that sometimes we don't believe we have.
I think that's very true, and it's often an unconscious belief, and we're not always aware that we're holding these beliefs, because, as you say, they've become a pattern that we haven't questioned, because they've been with us so long and they've been so reinforced over so many years. And I think part of what we do, both of us, is we bring kind of the unconscious patterns into conscious awareness, you know, so that people can actually learn to take charge of their beliefs and start to reframe and repattern them. And of course, that has a physiological effect in the body of changing your body's experience of itself, away from shame, which is a really big part of why I think sexual discord and dysfunction happens. So, gosh, that's really interesting. So we could talk about shame as well. Something no one else covers.
There's so many of these hidden emotions down there. So shame, embarrassment, guilt, that's a big one. You know, people feel guilty. Oh, I should be you know, perform in the way that they perform on the television, you know, or doing the things that other people do. But actually, we're all individuals, and we have to find that match with a partner that just works well with us and the partner. Yeah, so interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a huge mismatch, I think, between what we see as acceptable and what actually feels good to us, you know. And for me, of course, growing up gay and seeing only heterosexual examples of sexuality, which I know it's impossible to imagine now, but there just wasn't anything, there wasn't anything outside of men and women. And so it's like, what I am is not right because I don't fit the model that I'm growing up around. But even heterosexual couples have that problem because they see these amazing images of this athletic sex. Not everyone can achieve that, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And it's often how society you know, shapes us to, it's like we have to fit in a certain way, but that's not what humans are. You know, we're on this wonderful spectrum that there's some people at one end of the scale that might be, yes, what you would expect to see in society, maybe male, female, and having that perfect sexual relationship. But there's many more people down the other end of the spectrum that are still, you know, hopefully happy in the way they decide that they want their relationships to work. I do sometimes get people that come to see me about relationship problems because it's almost like everything isn't fitting into the norm. So, you know, I might get perhaps an older person who says, oh yeah, but I don't want to move in with my partner and you know, having sex every day and doing all these things every day. Perhaps for that person, it works better that they live in their house, their partner lives in their house, and then they just come together for fun and enjoyment and going out together. And so it's whatever works with you, with that consenting partner, really, in an intimate relationship.
Yeah, and I think we need more diverse models of that, don't we, in order to feel good about our choices. And so having this conversation is actually quite groundbreaking because we can actually open up that dialogue with people listening today and maybe considering their own choices in life. And one thing I'd kind of just like to finish up on is that, you know, a lot of our choices aren't conscious, you know. Choices of partner can often be based on what's familiar to us. And so we often choose, there is a joke that your first relationship is going to be with a facsimile of your parent, you know. It was certainly true for me, you know. I chose somebody that really reminded me of my father, so it was like, it felt safe, but it's not necessarily right for me, you know. And so those initial choices are not always good ones, are they?
That's true, absolutely true. And sometimes people, they get in a pattern of making the wrong choices of their relationship because, again, it feels safe, you understand it, it's much easier to go perhaps with a negative relationship because that's what you've always done, rather than understand why you get attracted to that type of person that's not helping you. And you know, hopefully as therapists, practitioners, we're very non-judgmental. We just want to go out there and do what we can do to help people to reframe and to understand and to know that, you know, some things are perfectly fine, and, you know, if that's what makes you happy in life and it's not hurting anyone else, then that's okay.
Beautiful. All right, well, thank you so much for your input here. It's been fascinating. And I guess, what would be a piece of advice you would give to someone who's struggling with their sort of sexual expression? Have you sort of, before we finish, have you got something that you see time and time again that maybe could help?
Well, of course, because my background was a nurse and I'm quite research evidence based, I always say, you know, rule out any physical issues first if you've got a problem. So, you know, just go and have a general health check with your doctor if you've got some, to make sure there's nothing physical going on there. Or occasionally some people take medications that cause some problems with their with sexual dysfunction. So have a checkup first, and if everything's okay, then get help if you need it, because there are plenty of people around like us that want to help you, you know, and it's just about finding the right person that can understand you and listen to you well and help you to take things forward. And it is worth me saying also that we're never here to fix people. Yeah, that we don't have a magic wand that goes abracadabra, you're fixed. It's all about working together. It's a partnership to help you to find the right direction forward. So a bit of a long answer, but
no, it's beautifully said. I think
get a physical check first, and then look for emotional help if you need it.
And there's no shame in looking for emotional help, because a lot of people, if listening here today, if you know anything like me, I really didn't want to go down that route. It was the bit that I really sort of would deny in myself that I needed any help. But actually, that's precisely where the resistance is often where you need the input, you know. And it's normal to feel a little bit reticent, I guess, about opening up to someone that you don't know. But you'll never regret, I think, allowing yourself to be witnessed in where you are in life and where you might be, if you can kind of change those patterns in some more positive way. It's been a real journey for me to discover that my emotions were so key to my health and happiness, and realizing how many years I lived without even awareness of what was going on in my body, you know, being very disconnected from myself. And so it's marvelous that there are people like you around doing this amazing work and helping people to kind of live better lives. And so if anybody wants to get in contact with you, Linda, what's the best way they can do that?
Well, I think if you people can go to my website, which is www.awakenthechange.com, and you'll find lots of information there, and you can click on and get a free initial consultation. Have a chat on the phone, you know, you can ask me any questions you want to ask me, and I can help you to decide if I'm the right person to go forward.
Yeah, brilliant. Because I think actually you touched on it earlier, and I meant to raise it, was that so much of what we do is about the relational fit, isn't it, between the therapist and the person you're working with. And you, as you said, you're working through it together as a team. It's not like we're fixing you with our magic wands. We're not doing that at all. We're encouraging you to look at things in a different way and perhaps rebalance yourself and sort of connect your brain in new and much more adaptive ways. So thank you so much for talking to me today and sharing your expertise and your willingness to talk about the subject that no one wants to talk about.
Yeah, well, thanks, Patricia. It's good talking to you as well. And thank you for raising this important aspect that, you know, perhaps people now will just stop and think about.
Yeah, hopefully so. And folks, if you've enjoyed this, please subscribe. And if you want to contact me, you can find me on alchemytherapies.co.uk. You can also find me now on myemotionalaudit.com and my podcast, rebelhealthradio.com. So you can find me in all sorts of ways, doing all sorts of things as ever. Some things don't change. But lovely to speak with you, Linda. Thank you so much. And bye for now.